Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater, and welcome to this episode of Her Success Story. Today, we're shaking things up and doing things a little differently, which I'm truly excited about. I'm talking to the three co-founders who started an organization called Las Peregrinas. And it's all about, this name is, and the history of the name is Women Who Walk Together. And when I learned about them and started speaking to one of the co-founders, I said, wow, what can we learn from not talking to one of them, but all three of them today? So to give you a little information, Las Peregrinas is a creative and consulting agency co-founded by a strategist, a copywriter, and a business intuitive. And no, I'm not going to tell you who's who. You need to listen. Today, they offer fully integrated, slightly unorthodox, which is 100% up my alley, consulting that's strategic, intuitive, and anchors a personal business in their singular work in the world that their clients do. They also craft websites, marketing strategies, design that conveys the spirit and power of their work. Please welcome in joining me, Stella Orange, Sarah Whitsett, and Rebecca Liston. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Ivy. It's a joy to be here with you.
So, and that was Stella, just so you guys know. You're going to hear the different voices, and I will try to do my best in addressing people by name. Don't hold me to it. If we mess up in the journey, it's the fun of it. So tell me, your backgrounds have been business owners. You've done different things. Introduce yourselves and share a little bit each of what your background was prior to co-founding the agency. Stella, you want to get started?
I saw Sarah's hand go up, so we'll start with Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, go for it.
So my background is very interesting. I actually have a master's in nursing. So I was a trained nurse practitioner, and I worked in the ICU for many a year, and then had kiddos and realized that schedule was not going to work. So took a few years off, and then ended up kind of finding my little place in the world in online marketing. That was about 10 years ago, and then I've been working in it fairly successfully over the years, and now I'm here. So,
and you have found the balance between mom, business, life, family.
Absolutely, that was one of the biggest reasons why I decided to move over into entrepreneurship as it is, because with the schedule that I was looking at for the rest of my life as a nurse practitioner, working in the intensive care unit, it was, call and weekends, and that was never going to change. And I have three they're bigger now, but I had three little boys at the time. And that was just not the parent that I could be. I did not have a partner who was able to help out in time management and all that kind of thing. So I had to really create an environment where I could make good money. I was flexible enough to get the kids and pick them up if they were sick, all of that normal thing. But also be able to support them at the same time. And this has been great.
Oh, that's great. And good for you for seeing when something has to change. We don't just keep, throwing ourselves against a brick wall saying, well, when is that wall going to collapse? So congratulations on that note.
Thank you.
Rebecca, come join us.
Yes.
How did you get into
My background's also in healthcare, as it happens, but natural medicine in my case. So the first business I built was in natural medicine, a homeopath, for many, many years. And then I came to realize that actually the thing that I was best at was running the business of being in healthcare. And, I loved my client relationships, but I wasn't really a great prescriber, to be honest, of medicine. So I'm not a great clinician, really love my clients, really love running a business. That seemed to be the thing that I loved the most. So I decided that I would step away from private practice and instead open up a center that had multiple practitioners within it. And so I ran that. And then I decided that wasn't quite enough. So I wanted to start working with other healthcare practitioners to help them also grow their practices because I was really good at the business end of things. And so then my client base went from being patients to, to coaching clients. And then that's sort of how it kind of went from there. It's been a almost 20-year process. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how Rome is not built in a day.
No, it is not.
Like, didn't you just write that article, Rebecca, recently?
Yes, I did write that article recently. That's right.
On Rome
it's
is
a
not
long
built
road,
in a day.
but here we are.
Yes, exactly. And it's in our journeys when we actually keep a level of not just being in the weeds of it, but we could actually look from the outside and then actually build for ourselves. And that actually comes back to our own families. Awesome. Stella, your journey.
Yeah, gosh, it was an adventure. I spent my 20s just following my nose, and that led me to teaching in Japan and being an outdoor educator. So I used to lead long distance bike trips for teenagers across Europe and the Alps, across the United States. I did some hiking trips in the Northern Rockies. And then I went on to get my teaching certification. I taught high school for 1 year in Seattle, Washington, in an alternative school, at a school that the name cracks me up to this day because I continue to do this work now with adults. The name of the school was Everyone Has a Song. And so it was an alternative school, grades 8 through 12, one-room schoolhouse in the basement of a Presbyterian church. And like Sarah, I kind of had a moment where I said, geez, I was teaching in the mornings, and then I was cleaning houses in the afternoon because I knew I didn't want to be a full-time teacher. So I would ride my bike to all of my cleaning clients' homes. And it was actually quite peaceful to clean after working with at-risk youth in the mornings. And I love my students, but I was like, I don't think this is the life I see for myself. And so that led me on a sort of soul-searching journey to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And spent some time in a nonprofit art center in the Rocky Mountains, did that for a time, and then turned down the executive directorship because I was like, that's not what I see for myself. And then I moved across the country to see about a guy, and that's when I started a copywriting business, and that was 10 years ago. And so I did that on my own for 8 years, and then these two approached me, and we had been longtime referral partners and colleagues. I'd hired each of them individually to do work for my company, so I knew who they were as women and the caliber of their work. And yeah, the rest is, as they say, history.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, so how do 3 women living in different cities, if I have this correct? Yes? Yes. So, okay. Everybody lives in different cities. You all have your own different personal lives. Mm-hmm. Come together and build and run a business. Because a lot of people get, we need to be together. We at least need to be in the same city. Give me a little bit of how you actually run and build a business. Does everybody have different responsibilities? I know you each have different sweet spots.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a bunch of questions. So the first question is, how did it happen? I think, Stella and I met, it's been about 7 years ago, maybe 8, I can't remember. And we actually were in the same mastermind together in New York. So we had both traveled to New York to be in that room, and we were together for several years. And then we maintained our relationship, and she ran an online business, as did I. So we're very comfortable with, sort of this distance interaction.
Piece.
Yeah. So this was just sort of par for the course. And we were, I consider us very lucky. Like, we hit that time in history where it was available. Mm-hmm. And I guess it was just something that we were used to. And then Rebecca as well knew Stella for traveling for an event. And I think it was Stella's event, if I'm correct. I'm not sure exactly. Anyway, they got to know each other, and then they started referring business back and forth. And it was we were actually working together virtually over the years, very consistently. And then when we decided to come together, it was really about, gosh, if we came together, we could really offer way more services than we could each do alone. And that was really, the beginnings of it.
And I got a storyteller that I am. I also got to polish this off. That what Sarah's saying, I got to polish it off a little bit, because Rebecca and Sarah hadn't actually met each other in person until I had a storytelling and marketing event I don't know, 3.5 years ago down in Austin, Texas. And I had done a private mastermind for some of my higher level copywriting clients and colleagues and invited them down to talk shop before we ran the actual, storytelling event. And so Rebecca came down, Sarah came down, and they met in that mastermind that first day. And it was this really cool loft space in Austin, Texas. And over the course of, I think it was a 3-day event, like, I know my lane. I'm a writer. I help people find their stories. I help them think about marketing in like refreshing and human ways, but I don't give business advice. Like, I love talking shop. I've built my own successful company. I'll tell you my opinion, but I don't want the responsibility of like advising people on the strategy that they should take. But I think it was the second or third day we had a breakout group, and Rebecca just sort of lifted her coffee cup and said, hey, anyone that wants to talk about business strategy or have any questions, we're doing one donut, one question up here on the second floor. And it was kind of a downtime in the actual event. And so a group of people went up, and as I have been told, because I wasn't there, I was doing some other session with the rest of the group, Sarah and Rebecca were kind of ping-ponging off each other and giving people in the group advice about what they should do to move forward. And that's when they kind of noticed each other. And Rebecca, to hear her tell it, said, well, I noticed that Sarah just had a really amazing brain. And she was walking people through step by step, like operationally how they needed to implement this thing. And Rebecca's like, that's not my strong suit. I can tell X, Y, and Z. And so there was this sort of meet cute. And I love that it was at my event and I wasn't even involved. So great people know great people. And that apparently led to a meet and greet phone conversation, Ivy, between the two of them, unbeknownst to me, where they were just connecting post-event. And I think it was Rebecca who said, hey, I know I've just met you, but let's go into business together. And Sarah, I believe, said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then they said, okay, who's going to tell Stella? So like it...
planned out
as well.
So I see that there was very much a situation that the three of you sat down and created a business plan, et cetera, et cetera.
That happened
which I
later.
know you tell your clients to do.
Yes.
And I tell my clients to do. And I think there's a really important component here of, first of all, let's just talk about a little bit of sometimes the universe delivers if we're actually in an open space to be listening to where opportunity is. So when we show up opened, opportunity consistently presents itself everywhere. Are we open to hearing the pulse of it, seeing the pulse of it? And then the question is, when we do, who are those action takers? And you ladies are the action takers, because you know, Rebecca, more power to you. Sarah, more power to you. It's like, hey, this has a pulse to it. Here's an opportunity. Let's go into the sandbox and see what we can play with and develop right now. Not later, but now.
Yeah, I mean, the story is very lengthy, but it really began back in 2013. And so I had been waiting for a number of years to find the right players, because I knew that that was what I was going to next create in what the business that I was going to build. I knew Stella at the time. I just didn't have the huevos to tell her, by the way, you and I are going into business together in a few years. So just hang on, because we have to meet our third partner. And I didn't know it was Sarah until 3 years ago in 2016. So it took a few years to come together, but I was waiting and watching for the opportunity. And yeah, when I saw it, I just knew, and I was like, all right, guys, this is it. We're doing it. And thankfully they said yes. I'm sure they, for a fleeting moment, thought that I was a little nuts, but here we are.
So in your organization, I always let's look in what the challenges have been. You know, 3 independent women, 3 people who've been running a business independently. You have your own thoughts, you have your strengths, you have the way you individually as a business leader do things, the decisions you're used to executing and making. And now all of a sudden there's 3 of you. What have been some of the challenges in this journey, and what have you learned from them? 2-part question. Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I would say for myself, like exactly what you described. You can imagine the challenges, right? We had each run businesses, and now we're merging these 3 companies. which individually had been successful. And now we're saying, oh, let's just like jam them together somehow, only because it seems like a good idea. Like, you know, it does seem a little bit counterintuitive, but there we were. I think the funny part, or perhaps not funny part, perhaps the magic of it is that actually a lot of it went very smoothly. We actually did a lot of similar things. We used a lot of the same systems. We brought team members along. So team members that I had worked with in my company up to that point still work with us today. We brought some folks along from Stella's world as well. So we actually brought people in that we'd already known. Some have transitioned out over the last couple of years, but we had team that we could bring to, which I think really helped like provide like an extra sense of glue and support. And so I think those things were really good, like the systems and the processes and all of these things that came together really beautifully. And I think for me, the biggest challenge was remembering that, like my voice isn't the only one, right? Like, and it's really no wonder that I was divorced when I look at my track record for communication. So, you know, communication, like really getting to know one another, because really we didn't know each other that well. Like I knew Stella, I had hired Stella. She'd done copywriting for me. I had worked for her, but I didn't really know her, right? And I really didn't know Sarah at all. So trying to really get to understand one another's strengths and really learning to trust each other's strengths has probably been the biggest challenge for me. So there's the communication piece, like, do I really understand what this person is saying or not saying, right? So we call it marriage counseling. We get counseling as a trio to help support that, right? We started that immediately. So the communication piece, but also really the trust, like being able to just sit back and know that, yeah, we actually are all in this. You know, I think that was a big thing for me. I know there were moments where it was like, oh my God, they're going to leave me. I'm going to be screwed. Like, I'm going to be stuck here with this business that we started and they're going to run away because this is really awful or really hard, you know, and you just don't know that we're all in. We had to kind of keep repeatedly pledging to one another that, no, this is it. This is the business I'm going to build. Like, I'm here. I'm with you. Yes, this is hard. Yes, we're butting heads on some stuff, but I'm here and I've got you. And we've had some personal things come up along this journey where we've really had to step in and be there together. It was early in our time together where one of Sarah's little dudes had it wasn't long, but it was a little bit of a blip on the health radar. And I remember, Sarah, you're like, I couldn't believe that I could just trust you guys to keep running the business. She's like, what the hell? Like, how come this business is still going on and I'm not there? And, you know, just really leaning into it. I think that was a big thing, not only to learn to do myself, but also to really appreciate when others do it, right? So, to really value that.
I truly want to call something out here because I think it's a very, very big learning lesson. To learn to trust your partners and trust in relationships is a very, very big deal. And when you are in any partnership, and I've been in a few in my own business journey, when you're in any partnership, there are times that some people need a little space because of something that's going on in your personal life, and to hold that space and trust that just because they're not pulling their weight during this limited period of time, and guys, listeners, understand that limited period of time could be several months.
Right.
That they still bring value and they come back with value. That it's a moment in time in the journey. A lot of business owners, when glitches like that happen, say, you're not pulling your weight, we need to change everything, versus hold on, let's actually see what's going on, see where the long-term commitment is, go back to that trust. If there's not a long-term commitment, then that's something else to be looked at. When there is, to have that trust and belief. So more power to you, ladies. That's big.
Yeah, and
it's a big deal.
Yeah, I was just adding
Sarah, go ahead.
That we very consciously thought of at the beginning, because, you know, two of us have kids, and, you know, it's one of those things as Rebecca as well grew her business when her kids were small, and when I had my other job as a nurse practitioner, that for me it's very terrifying to not be able to work and care for your kids. And so I remember we had several conversations at the beginning when we were trying to figure out how is this going to be put together, where we actually make financial decisions that back that up so that we have money aside to be able to take care of each other if we need to. So it's not something that we take lightly around here, that's for sure.
So Sarah, what has surprised you in this journey?
I think actually what has surprised me the most is, and this is going to sound weird, but like it's gone very well. There have been moments, of course.
We could all laugh in the background. It's okay. We could take that 1 5-second pause and everybody giggle. It's like, yeah, hasn't it been shocking?
Yeah. But like we've had our moments of, oh my God, what is going on? Like, every business has that. But I think that, I actually think I'm like, we've done a good job of, kind of trying to get ahead of problems. Maybe that's experience of having, been down the road in different ways. But yeah, like on a personal level, it's been lovely. So that, I had gotten advice from people before, like, oh, we're going to a partnership. It's a nightmare. Why would you do that? And all those things. And so, I have to say I have not, it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been very enjoyable, I have to say.
Stella, speaking of partnerships, what tips do you have for other people who are either in partnerships or considering what would it be like if I had a partner in my organization?
I have a saying, Ivy, that still holds true and even more so now, which is business is the most lucrative form of therapy. And so I think for me, that goes triple with having two co-founders. I really have had to check my ego, and I have a healthy ego, and I actually don't want to annihilate it. It's part of the fun part of me, but I've really had to check it in multiple ways again and again, and sometimes surrender it. For me, the journey has been about letting go of feeling like I need to know everything, which is like actually for me personally, one of the most terrifying things in life. I'm not someone that is always paying attention to everything that's going on, but I don't like it when I don't feel like I'm tracking a conversation. And now that's actually a routine part of my workday when we're in client calls with the three of us. If the conversation is not pertaining to a particular marketing deliverable or a marketing message, I tend to soften my listening and let one of the other two drive the conversation. And I'm not a control freak, but I'm on my game. And so when I show up to meetings, I'm used to, here's the agenda, here's what I need to get from the client so that I can do my best work. But sometimes when I first tried to do that in this partnership, I was exhausted because the level of listening that I bring to doing copywriting is so profound that it takes physical energy. And so when I was doing that 7 hours, 6 hours of a client workday, I would just be pooped. And so finally, Sarah and I had to talk about it. She was like, honey, have you noticed I just smile and nod when you talk to the client about their marketing message? She was like, it is just lights on nobody's home over here. She was like, because I trust that you're handling it. And so she's worked with me. Sarah, bless your heart, has coached me to just relax the white knuckle death grip of thinking that I've got to have all the answers or track things. And, coming out of running your own business for 8 years, like, that's an adjustment, because if you're not tracking, chances are something's fallen through the cracks. And so just learning, again, returning to that trust, I think I would just say, like, are you willing to take that journey? Like, because it's not for everybody, and I didn't think it was for me, years ago. If you would ask me if I would go into partnership, I was like, no, other people are nuts. But like, it just made sense when this opportunity came, as you originally started the call. Like, I saw the opportunity and I was a whole body yes to it. I knew, and my thinking mind had to catch up with what my body and my somatic self knew. Yeah. And I trust, I've spent a lifetime learning how to cultivate that trust in the body knowing, but my brain had a real hard time with it because I was like, this does not make rational sense, what I'm doing. And that's not been just one time that I've had that thought. That's multiple times along the way.
No, 100%. I think one of the things you're saying, which makes is so important to acknowledge out there, is our gut, our intuition, our body speaks to us. Are we willing, especially in Stella's world of copywriting, are we willing to listen to the story that it's telling us versus just push it away and say, I know what I know, when we go with our brain versus what our intuition with our other senses are hearing, and just check in on it, people. Rebecca, what tips do you have for our listeners as far as, clearly you're, speaking of intuitive, clearly you're an intuitive in the description, of listening to our inner self and using it as a level of, Lord knows sometimes we have to shut off our mind.
Oh, absolutely.
What tips and thoughts can you share with our listeners on the business side of that, of listening to your gut, listening to your intuition, listening to your heart center, however you want to phrase it, it's all the same?
Yeah, I think that, the important part, and this will make sense when you think about my decision to partner with other people in business, is that our intuition is one voice. Our mind is wonderfully gifted. Our minds are as well. So our minds need to be listened to. Our intuition needs to be listened to, right? We have to listen to the words we're even speaking to other people. Like, all of these things have a place at the table. And so, in my opinion, which is going to maybe sound a little bit odd given that I am an intuitive, but I would say, like, that is one voice. And so if I could wave my magic wand, everyone would allow their intuition to have a place at the table, a seat at the table, a voice, right? Not necessarily does it always override the brain, right? Because sometimes the brain is the thing that actually knows in this moment, this is what actually needs to be done. But they're equals. Our bodies, our soul, all of these things, need to be listened to with equality. And I think too often we quiet the intuition and we jack the volume up on the mind. I would just like to see them both be honored and come to the table and be listened to equally. And so that would be, if I could change the world, that's what I would recommend we do. So, and I would recommend we take that approach in business. And so that's a lot of the reason why I have partnered. And it's not that my two business partners aren't deeply intuitive themselves, because they certainly are, right? But in certain moments, right, I can crank the volume up on the intuition and Sarah can crank the volume up on the brain, right? And then we're equally represented, right? We've got both things going on. It's that left brain, right brain thing. Because when I get right into my intuition, I have to shut off half my brain because it doesn't function quite as well. So, we need both sides, right? We need that equitable functioning between both sides of who we are as human beings. And so I don't know if I'm exactly effectively answering your question, Ivy, but I think it's important to listen to both and pay attention.
Very, very valid. And I think it's vitally important as well. So, Sarah, as we start to wrap up here, a couple of things. Any tips or strategies you ladies would have, and I'd love like one sentence from each of you, for our listeners today who are in business or they're women leaders contemplating the growth and development of their own individual brands, whether they're growing and developing their own businesses. What have you each learned individually as women? Sarah, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I would just say lead into what we talked about earlier around trust, whether it's trusting yourself or trusting the people around you. Again, that was a big learning for me as well. But I'm continuing to learn it, but like when you really lean into trusting a person or a relationship, it's quite astonishing the benefits that come out of it. You can get better ideas, you make decisions easier. There's less, kind of angst when you're making a decision on your own when you trust yourself. So figure out how to do that.
Figure out how to trust yourself. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Stella, what do you have?
I would say notice how you're treating other people. One of the
Notice how
biggest
you're treating other people. Interesting. Go, tell me more.
The thing that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in working in partnership with Rebecca and Sarah is how seriously they take their relationships with other people. And I do too, but I tend to be less operationally organized than the two of them and less systematically organized. So just on the basic etiquette of sending thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes to people, acknowledging when someone has done something for you, when they went out of their way to help you or smooth your path, celebrating birthdays, sending cards or gifts when there's a milestone or there's a death in the family. Like, I always aspired to be a person who was that classy, but I just, for whatever reason, couldn't get it together to systematize that in the company. And that's something I'm really proud of. And it wouldn't have happened without Rebecca and Sarah and our team setting up the systems to just be very human and very attentive to the other people in our community. And it feels so good to receive that. And it also feels good to see the impact of acknowledging other human beings' existence. So notice how you're treating people and see, what support do you need to actually live up to the standards you hold for yourself.
Fair enough. Rebecca, what do you got?
I would say that no matter where you find yourself in your work or your career development, like, nothing is worth selling your soul. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we talked a little bit about just like one small way when Sarah was talking about her own history and, in healthcare, saying, well, once I had my little people, I knew that this wasn't going to fit, with the life, the parent, the role model that I wanted to be for my kids. It wasn't going to fit. I needed to make a change. But that's one way in which she might have sold her soul had she stayed, as working in the ICU. But I see it happening in entrepreneurs. I see it happening in people in corporate, wherein things that they're doing actually don't feel good to them. And they're doing it because they were told that was the thing to do, or because they read somebody's book, or because they, whatever, like fill in the blank, right? They watched a podcast, they saw a TED Talk, that whatever it was, or they've been indoctrinated by their family or their core beliefs that were handed to them by generations, like wherever it comes from. There's stuff that we believe or we've been told, and we sometimes, if we live our lives according to that, and instead of being who we are as individuals and human beings, we can find ourselves in a pickle, right? And I think there's nothing that's worth, staying in that space of being in a pickle, if you will,
Fair enough.
Just to achieve something.
So a few of the comments that I have learned and listened to today have been to truly trust when you're in all relationships and valuable relationships, to truly trust. Understand that your belief in yourself, listen to your intuition, listen to what your body, your heart, your gut is talking to you about it. Trust in yourself. Don't sell your soul. Don't go in that journey of pulling, saw this out there, heard this, and just kind of you end up as a ball in a pinball machine and you end up exhausted. In that, ladies, how can our listeners learn more about you, stay in touch? Who wants to share?
Me, I'll do it.
Stella.
Not visual, but you would see my two business partners pointing in my direction. So I would say go to our website. It's www.lasperegrinas.org. And there, if you want to, set up a conversation, we love to meet people who resonate with our work. So it's not a sales call, it's a meet and greet call. What you got going on, what you got up your sleeves, what is there for us to talk about. And then also there's a sign up for our email newsletter list. And we write, the three of us write a newsletter together every week. So that's a good way to stay in touch and find out more about what's happening over in our world.
Fabulous. Listeners, check out Las Peregrinas, spelling and everything, and you just click through in the show notes. Check these ladies out. These ladies are leaders in doing things in a pioneer way, which I happen to love. Business does not stay stagnant, and these are three women leaders who have come together in the pulse of understanding what is best for themselves, what is best for business, and then offer it back to their clients in a variety of different ways. So please check them out. Thank you for joining us here on Her Success Story. Remember to write a review, subscribe. We come into your inbox with fresh guests and fresh content weekly on Monday mornings. Let us come to you, and also let us know, what else do you want to hear? We are here to serve you, listeners, and I appreciate you joining us here today. See you next time.